Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has never been a great strategist, but he is undeniably a master tactician. In his 22 years in power, he has skillfully maneuvered through the challenges of Turkish politics, including corruption investigations against his own family. He has kept the opposition divided and managed to stay in power despite a years-long economic crisis. But in the past few weeks, Erdogan has made some of the biggest mistakes of his political career. His attempt to sideline Istanbul's popular mayor, Ekrem Imamoglu, ahead of the next presidential elections has completely backfired and turned Imamoglu into the face of the opposition. By arresting him on bogus charges, Erdogan aimed to eliminate Imamoglu from the race and regain the control of Istanbul's municipality. Instead, tens of thousands have taken to the streets in protest, rallying around Imamoglu as their last hope for a better future. Erdogan may have succeeded in putting Imamoglu behind the bars, but it was a massive miscalculation, and here is why. Until now, the Turkish opposition has been divided and disorganized. There were several opposition figures who could challenge Erdogan, but only two consistently polled well enough to beat him, and they were Imamoglu and Ankara's mayor Mansur Yavaş. And last month, the opposition party has finally decided on Imamoglu's candidacy for the next elections, but the debates and disagreements over the best candidate continued. Erdogan ended those debates himself. By arresting Imamoglu, he did not eliminate him from the race. Instead, he solidified his candidacy. Now Imamoglu is the only opposition candidate against Erdogan, and the Turkish opposition is more united, more organized behind Imamoglu than ever before. He energized a tired opposition. For years, Turkey's opposition has struggled to offer a real alternative. Despite growing dissatisfaction with Erdogan's rule, opposition leaders failed to inspire hope or mobilize people. But Erdogan fixed that problem too. By arresting Imamoglu in such a blatant act of injustice, he has unleashed a new surge of energy, especially among young people. Tens of thousands of university students have taken to the streets, sparking a new wave of protests. And this newfound energy has forced the opposition politicians to act. They now see that they can rally massive crowds, shifting the fight from parliamentary politics, which Erdogan can easily manipulate, to the streets. He also helped people overcome their fear. Erdogan's authoritarian rule has been ruthless, especially against the Gülen movement. He has jailed hundreds of thousands of Gülenists, confiscated their private properties, and used torture systematically in prisons. This created a climate of fear in the country and discouraged any dissident voice from crossing Erdogan's red lines. But Imamoglu's arrest has changed that. For Turkey's younger generation, who have now nothing but Erdogan's rule, Imamoglu was their last hope. His arrest has pushed people to the streets with a new sense of urgency, and they are no longer afraid. They now realize how powerful they are when they come together, and this moment has shifted the political landscape in Turkey. Erdogan's rule has long relied on a religious nationalist voter base. Traditionally, this group has been skeptical of the leftist opposition, particularly the Republican People Party, which is now leading the protests in the streets. But after years of poor government, economic mismanagement, and corruption, that bias is now fading. Even young people from AKP-supporting families joined the protest. The conservative cities witnessed massive demonstrations, and middle-aged and elderly conservatives who have never voted for anyone other than Erdogan now openly supports the opposition. Erdogan built his career as a populist, claiming to understand and represent the ordinary Turks in the streets. But after more than 2 decades in power, he and his party have become incredibly rich, so rich that they can no longer relate to their own voters. This growing disconnect has fueled frustration within Erdogan's base. By arresting Imamoglu so openly, without even attempting to justify it properly, Erdogan insulted the intelligence of ordinary people, including many of his own supporters. Since the 2023 elections, Erdogan abandoned his ideological economic policies and implemented austerity measures that have drained ordinary people. Erdogan's economic program has many flaws, but the combination of heavy taxes and high interest rates slightly improved Turkey's economic outlook for foreign investors. This economic recovery could have helped Erdogan in the next elections. However, Imamoglu's arrest shattered the last remnants of confidence in his leadership. In a desperate attempt to prevent Turkish lira from further depreciating, Turkey's central bank burned through $15 billion, essentially the entire sum the country had painstakingly accumulated over the past 2 years. Then why did Erdogan make such a mistake? There are few possible answers. First, he's out of touch. Years of power, corruption, and their lavish lifestyles made him and his party blind to the public's anger. And he is overconfident. Erdogan and his party have defeated the opposition so many times that they assume that they can easily do it again, and there is a feeling of victory. The recent fall of Assad regime in Syria have further boosted Erdogan's and his party's self-confidence, and he underestimated the streets. Erdogan and his party have long dismissed the opposition as weak and incompetent, but they fail to see the growing negative energy among ordinary citizens. And now the question is this the end of Erdogan? Not so fast. The situation is fluid, and this is a multiplayer game that will shape through the interactions of those players. What are Erdogan's options? He could crack down harder. He could further tighten his grip with even more arrest, more violence, more brute force. But this policy also creates more popular backlash from the society and further destabilize the country. He could step back, he could allow Imamoglu to run in the next presidential election, but this would embolden the opposition even further. He could also wait it out. He could hope that the protests will lose momentum over time, but the energy in the streets is too big, too strong to simply fade away. Even the ongoing demonstrations end this week or next, Turkey will probably witness similar waves of street protests in the near future. The course of events also depends on the opposition leadership. For protesters in the streets, having a political party with a strong party organization is both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because without a political party, such street protests fail to offer a viable alternative to the established order. From this perspective, Turkish protesters are lucky to have Republican People's Party and a very popular presidential candidate, Ekrem Imamoglu. However, in the Turkish case, the opposition party is too submissive to Erdogan's red lines. The Republican People's Party tried to keep the street protests as an ordinary political rally and keep the demands modest. So there's a mismatch between the protesters in the streets and their politicians. If the Republican People's Party fails to keep the pace with the protesters' energy, then a political disconnect will be relevant for the opposition too. No matter what happens, one thing is clear: Turkey is at a crossroads once more.